Welcome back to the Draw 4 Turn podcast with your hosts, Austin and Dalton, where we are back to talk about, one of our favorite things. It's Pokemon card time. And
Let go.
we've got tons and tons and tons of different stuff that we could talk all of your ears off about, but that's why we've been doing this in installments. And so welcome over to episode 3. This is 2 more episodes than I thought that we were actually going to make, so I'm pumped about that. And so we've got, we kind of just want to start off with focusing in on, I know that we've talked a lot about just Paldea Evolved coming out and coming up soon. We've talked a lot about just kind of like some different meta decks, and so let's just start with what's been going on, like what has been going on in the meta. What have you been seeing? What have you been excited about? What has been falling off? What do you got?
So, I have been seeing more and more things that just make me so excited for Paldea Evolved that it's making me have a hard time with our current meta. And so, what I've been doing, I've been playing at locals and stuff. I've been bringing the dragons. Like that's all I'm doing right now. And what I've seen fall off is the dragons. That it was a solid deck at rotation. It is a less solid deck currently, and that's just because there's so much of the Guardy out there. The Gardevoir is just everywhere, and Dragons has a bad matchup to it. But it is everywhere right now, and I think that is the deck that is the deck to beat right now. And I think it is so dumb that that is the deck to beat right now because it is a functional Stage 2 deck that is using 2 Stage 2 attackers. Is it the same basic in Stage 1? Yes. But it is using 2 Stage 2 attackers, and it's like, I'm mad. I'm happy because I want to be mad at that, but it's also like, I'm mad. I see what you're doing, and I can't stop it.
I'm just mad that it's really kind of like the only Stage 2 attacker right now, or like Stage 2 deck, especially like with the more coming over, like, you've got the Meowscarada, the Skeledirge, you've got Tinkaton, which nobody's ever going to play. It's going to be really bad forever.
Got Meowscarada right there. Get ready for card number 3 today.
I was going to say, are we going to finish on card number 3 today as well?
Card number 3 today.
And so I'm a big Gardevoir believer. It was like it's the deck that I've been bringing to locals, trying that one out. It's just been the one that's the most fun. It's the closest to a fairy type deck that I can get currently until Tinkaton comes out, and then I lose on that one. And I'm incredibly encouraged at the fact that there are now decks that can keep up at the pace of like some of these faster, heavy hitter like V decks, and then not to mention like with different things coming out like Wo-Chien and what is it, Chen-Pao and Ting-Lu? Is that
Ting-Lu? Yeah,
all
of the.
Then there's the fish,
ruins.
and the fish one doesn't count, but we'll talk about that one later. And but there's also like more basic EXs which feel a little bit more balanced. Is kind of like how I feel about them. Like they're not as overpowering as some of these other decks are from like these heavy hitting V cards like like the Zacian V that came out in Sword and Shield base set. So I'm glad that we're moving away more from those. Glad Gardevoir has been doing as well as it has, because that means that I've been playing it and it means that I've been doing decently. But it's also a little bit sad because now everybody's playing it, everybody's teching against it, and now it makes it a lot harder. So there hasn't, in my opinion, been too huge of a switch up in the meta for things that have been like more and more powerful or more surprising for things I've been seeing. The only thing that I've seen and I've been kind of like piecing around with and thinking through is there's been a lot more Arceus decks that I've seen on the ladder, on Limitless, on all kinds of different tournaments coming in, and I feel like there is an untapped well of potential coming from an Arceus deck that hasn't been discovered yet. What do you think?
I would agree with that. I think that I hated Arceus right when he came out, because right when the Arceus deck came out, it was so broken that like you could just grab any 2 cards that you wanted, you could accelerate all of the energy into play, and that like turn 2 you were running and you were winning. It still does that, but it doesn't do it as well as it did anymore. And so I really like the direction it's gone, because now it is a true support line that like you have to commit to that being your support line, and it's a 2 prize liability, but it's not a true liability because it can attack. And it's like, I want Arceus to do well. I want it to stick around. I don't think it needs to be like best deck in format, but I think that it is very healthy for the game. And I do think that there's a partner there. I don't know who the partner is, but there's a partner there that is going to make Arceus really relevant again,
Hmm.
and then we're all going to start having to be swinging with fighting types
Yeah.
to take him back out.
And honestly, like the thing that I have been trying to figure out is it's like you've got Arceus Duraludon, which is kind of like a staple. You've got Arceus and Vulpix. You've got Arceus and Flying Pikachu, and I feel like there's got to be something else. I mean, there used to be like Arceus and Corviknight, which Corviknight is still popping up here and there. Have you seen the Corviknight
Corviknight's
stall
fun.
decks?
I have. Corviknight's fun.
They look
I'd be so mad to play one, but
they look
yeah.
so silly, and it makes me so happy that Corviknight's actually doing well again. And then like, let's see, there's Arceus Corviknight. There was Arceus Aggron at one point. I think there was also like Arceus Sandaconda way back
Arceus
when.
Tina shows up a lot right now
Arceus
too.
Tina is still very popular, and I hate that deck. That is the bane of my existence.
What I think is hilarious is that it's like neither of those cards should go together. Like
Mhm.
the way that they were built, like
Oh yeah.
beyond like lore reasons,
Oh yeah.
no. But like the way that those cards are built, what Tina wants to do, what Arceus wants to do is not the same. But here they are, and they're doing really well.
And that's what I mean. Like Arceus just allows Tina to be able to swing for big damage, and then also if Tina is losing all of its energy from like its attacks, you can either switch back into Arceus and get more energy, or you can just switch back into Arceus and use that as like your secondary backup attacker. And by the time that somebody can actually really realistically knock out your Arceus, you should have a backup Arceus or a second Tina that's already ready, and you're basically set up for the entirety of the game. And that's
Yeah.
like that's the thing that I don't like about that deck. It's just super boring. Is kind of what it feels like. There's not a lot of just variety to it. I mean, I've seen people taking like an Espeon VMAX, which is like fine, but I don't know.
It is a lot of pile up, swing, and it's like there's always gonna be decks like that. There's always gonna be people who like to play like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's not fun. I don't more power to you if you are a
Yeah.
player like that. But typically, players like that, in my mind, are the players who are like, the only way to have fun playing this game is if I win. And if the best way to win is if I'm playing consistently. And this deck is going to be consistent, and I will consistently win, which means I will consistently have fun. And it's like, I,
Eh.
I like to win. I want to win. I'm not saying play bad decks, but it's like, it's so much more fun to like have fun and have the possibility of whiffing and have things that like playing into the cards. Nope, nothing wrong with consistency, but like it's okay to lose some consistency.
It's okay to lose some consistency, and then also you have to think through like what techs are you actually gonna like put in there to like help out with your matchups, which will inherently lose your consistency because oftentimes your tech cards don't really have as much of a flow with like the main strategy that your deck is really going with.
Hmm.
If they do and they line up beautifully, then it's great. Like that's perfect. That's exactly what you want. But
Yeah,
oftentimes it doesn't, and it's. I feel like there's a very fine line between wanting to like win like every single game all the time. That's the only way to have fun. And there's also a fine line between like I'm going to like build something that's super fun and then win through that, even if it does have the lack of consistency. The only thing I don't like about Arceus and Giratina is just like it's the same reason I don't like Arceus Duraludon and why I never picked up and play that deck. It's because it is so brain dead straightforward. Of all right, here we go, double turbo. Here's my energy. I'm just gonna swing and hit you and hit you, and you have to you either have to out damage me or outpace me, or you just lose. And it's like that type of strategy to me isn't as fun, which is why I like Gardevoir because I feel like in Gardevoir mirrors, it's just like you can feel your brain hurting at the end of them. And against like every single matchup, you actually have to like think like I have all the tools in my deck to beat this deck and to beat this matchup. How do I get to them? How do I sequence correctly instead of just boom energy, all right, outpower me. It's like that's the format that we want to try to move away from, which is why like more stage twos like seem like they're a lot more fun. The slower quotation marks Lost Box decks is why like Lost Box should be a little bit slower. It's got way too much going for it right now, even still.
Yep.
And then like I still stand by the fact of like with Lugia should have ended your turn when you used Archeops. There's no argument against why that's crazy. That is.
That should have ended your turn or should have been an attack. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But there's so many different like cards similar to that. Like even like Miraidon is also like right there.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing with like Miraidon and Regieleki is it's the exact same thing that I was just describing with Arceus Duraludon, is that it's so linear, and even though Arceus Duraludon with the Vulpix just won EUIC a couple of weeks ago, Vulpix was the tech and had the Drapions that had a little bit more spice into it, which, made it a lot more fun. But, like, Miraidon's current main build with just the Regieleki is you are literally just smacking big damage, and it's like, alright, smacking big damage, what are you gonna do next? And it's like, I guess I'm just gonna have to either outthink you, outpace you, or outstrategize you. And like I don't like those decks.
Yeah, I don't either. I will say in defense of Arceus Duraludons, like I actually really like that deck a lot, and it is not my play style, and so I was very off of it for a long time, and I had no interest in playing it. I'm like, this deck is, like you said, it is linear. It's kind of brain dead. Like you sit down and you play and you run. But when we were in Knoxville, one of my best matches, one of my favorite matches, was against an Arceus Duraludon. And the reason it was so much fun was because I had the Flapple. And so it's like I could hit the damage where I needed it to, and I could manipulate the board state, which required them to not play like that. And I'm like, oh, so you don't have to pile big swing, because if she did that, she would have lost. That it's like I could maneuver and I can get around it. And so it's like it has made me like the deck more, and I've built it, and I've been able to have just like my build on the ladder is not fancy whatsoever, but it's like I can do things that with it that a traditional big swing deck doesn't do. That it's just more fun. I think that there's more variety that you can do, even though you are just hitting with Duraludon or hitting with Arceus. There is more strategy, I think, that goes into it than there is with like Miraidon, because Miraidon is, I'm going to tandem unit, and then I'm going to hit you with a Lucky. And then I'm going to tandem unit, and I'm going to hit you with a Lucky. And it's like, there's less variety there.
Yeah. So. And I mean, I think that's partly due to just the Arceus itself, is that, like, as you can see, like, you can tech in the Vulpix, you can tech in, like, a fighting card, you can tech in, like, a metal, like, fight, like, a metal Pokemon, and as, like, a backup attacker. And so there's a lot of just variety that comes in with Arceus when you're able to flex it into different areas, which is why, like, everybody hated the V-Star and the V-Max, like, just era, because it was big swing, but I liked a little bit more when they brought out the V-Star, because then you're like, alright, so I've got V's, I've got V-Stars, and I've got V-Maxes, so it's like V-Maxes should be big, beefy, big swing boys, and then V-Stars should hopefully be a little bit more, like, techie towards it, but you're still kind of, like, evolving towards it. It never really got to that. I think they kind of ran out of time before they're like, alright, we gotta transition to something else, which is fine, but that kind of, like, is what has propelled it into this. It's not really that much of a slower format yet, but it is getting to a slower format, especially once like cards like Iono come out.
Yes, and I would say, like what you're saying, I want to put a pin in, because I think it's going to be a great transition to what we want to do for the latter half of the episode.
Okay.
Because like talking about the V-Star versus V-Max, it's like I think that will transition. We will get there. Before we get there, I do want to say, just a question for you, because I think there's a right answer. What do you think? What do you think currently is the, like, this is the tech, this is the spice, this is the play, that it's like if you can find a card and find a way to fit it into your 60, what card would that be? Like currently, as we have our standard, as we have our meta, what do you think is the one card that you're like, this is the one? If I could find a way to fit this into the 60, here it comes.
Like if I had a 61st card, what would be the card that I would put in like a large?
Because I've got one that, regardless of the deck I'm playing, it's typically going to be the 61st, 62nd card.
Okay.
So what is your 61st, 62nd card that you think goes into a deck?
Typically, and this is where, like, there is an exception kind of to this rule, but I personally think that one of the best one-off cards that you can put in any kind of deck is Raihan. Partly just because, like, for the most part, you will always be able to use it. Like, there's always going to be an opportunity and always a chance, unless if you're playing, like, a strictly, like, special energy deck like Lugia. But you, like, or if you get knocked out in between turns with damage counters or something, like, funky with, like, an Inteleon kind of thing. So now I'm already talking myself out of it. But, like, typically when your cards are getting knocked out, then you have an opportunity to put a card back in and go and find and search for something different. which is like it gives you energy acceleration plus one whatever that is still in your deck. And if you're smart about it and you're playing around it and you're like trying to think through the sequencing wise of like what to leave in, where your energy's kind of like falling towards, it was the card that was my savior for a lot of matches when I was playing my RCS Vulpix deck over in Knoxville. And just really in almost any deck, I feel like it has a place in almost every deck, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the reason it's the almost, and the reason you have these other things, like that's why it's 61. That's exactly why it is the first one that is cut. Yeah. Raihan's a good answer. My answer is less well-rounded, but I think that just the more I have played, the more I have realized if I can find a way to fit the Galarian Zapdos V, this card has got so much promise that it is so much fun, because that 170 is a great number to hit, and it's easy to bolster that attack stat, and that's hitting most of your support Pokemon, taking them out. Most people are playing Pokemon V still, so you get that lower thing. This is doing what it was supposed to do with Eternatus, and then having the ability to knock off a special energy. So if you don't one-shot them, you've knocked off the special energy. Most decks are running that right now. And then also, if you're going up against like the Miraidon, they lose. If you drop if you drop this, they lose, because this one-shot's a lucky VMAX. And odds are they've got multiple luckies on the bench. They've got that Raikou on the bench. There's nothing that they can do. For singular fighting energy, you win. And so it's like, it matches up well into everything. I think that it is just a fun card to have. It is an easy card to have. It is my 61st, 62nd card, but it's like, if I want a spicy tech, this is the spicy tech I'm putting in.
And you know what would go really well with that?
The Raihan?
Raihan! Imagine that you already got through your fighting energy and it was already in the discard pile. Man, look at that. Look at that 2-card combo. Well, 3-card combo, because you'd have to have the fighting energy in there too. But 3-card combo.
Zapdos, Raihan onto Zapdos, grab the choice belt, hit it, knock it out, you win.
Choice belt or second double cross switcher. Whoo! Boys coming up. Oh man, no, I love that. I know you've been talking a lot about the Galarian Zapdos for a while now, and that card it's so good, it's so busted. Especially like how I was saying, like my predictor is, I really do think that Arceus is some very high untapped potential. I think that like, especially with all of these new like EX cards that are coming out, there's got to be something that like helps to, because like double turbo energy is not going anywhere. Like basic energy, obviously, like, so you, on like your second turn, you can still use your V-Star power to go and get 2 free cards to then use with all of your other stuff. It's like, why, like, to me, I think Koraidon is really good, but like if you're playing like a Ting Lu that needs 3 energy to attack, why would you not also use something that's putting 180 damage down, and then also putting damage counters onto something else, so that if they were to switch that card out, now that thing doesn't have any abilities, or it was already knocked out. So I don't know. In Arceus, and the only reason I'm going off on that tangent is because Galarian Zapdos will one-shot the Arceus as it comes back in.
There's just so many options. I don't know. Yeah.
See, we're down there. We're already down. We're way too far down there.
But I just wanted to ask that, because I think that it's interesting. I think that a lot of people have different answers. I think Arven comes up a lot. That it's like, who is your 61st card? I think Arven pops up a lot. I think Raihan. I think Zapdos. I think that there are so many good cards that are phenomenal techs, but you just don't have room for them. So it's like, I just think it's interesting. Like, what is your 61? What are you going to run with? How are you going to try to break the game here?
Well, I think that's like how we were talking about this on our last episode, where Penny was the 61st card that like slid in as the 60th card in a lot of people's different decks and a lot of people's different things. Like, I know there's cards like Penny and Volo and Collapse Stadium that like bump off or take out big prize, like big 2 prizers that are like the Pokemon V or Pokemon EXs that are in play, and it kind of helps with the prize trade. It helps us like with a surprise, but it's like, do you really want to commit that one resource to really like saving those different times, and how like realistic are you going to be able to find those different things? But
that's kind of, I like you saying Volo. I think that one's an interesting one, that it's like, I think Volo's not hit his time yet.
Oh, no.
But I think that
His time
I
is
mean,
cresting though, because it only
it
does
is.
V's.
Yeah, but it's like Giovanni's Exile, when we had
Mhm.
that card, was useful. And I
Yep.
think that Volo was right there. And I think that it is one of those things is that it's like, with people playing so much fish, you need to get that fish out of there. We needed to get the Dead Eye Charge out. So
Yep.
we exiled. Like, we need to get that out. And I think that Penny is nice to bring it back, but it's sometimes nice to throw it away. I mean, Echoing Horn is still there, but then we're also about to get that Erica
Hmm.
that'll pull it right back. So it's like, it's not Hospitality. Hospitality is the one we've already had, but it's the new Erica.
I
And
think
so
it's
it's
like
like,
it's probably like Erica's determination.
sounds right.
they're
But it's
all determination.
Yeah, but it's like we're about to be able to punish if you try to penny. So if you try to penny that away, it's like no, you want to volo that. I think that there is a time that is coming for it, and I'm excited to see it. I think that that is going to be. I think volo is like my 71st card. So it's like
71st card.
there's 10 other cards I want first, but if I had 71,
Hmm.
volo might be there.
It is Erica's invitation. So
That makes sense.
you've got
She's inviting you to get dead.
hmm she's inviting you for the death. And so
Yeah.
I've got over on our other screen, there's also like the other, 151 Pokemon from what is it? The Pokemon card 151 that are like coming out. I don't know if I'm transitioning into anything too early, so I'm gonna close out of that. But I do know want to talk about like if you're talking about like cards and texts and different things that are coming in from like just when you're thinking about it, I think that I also kind of like break it down into like what is the most useful Pokemon tech to kind of get in there. And like for me, like my supporter is obviously Raihan. My supporter is Raihan. My item card is Escape Rope, and then my like Pokemon tech is like Bidoof and Bibarel. Like
Yeah.
if you can fit those cards into almost any deck, then there's going to be like those are going to be the things that are always going to be helpful and useful. And obviously, of course, Galarian Zapdos V. But I don't know, because like when you asked me
That's
that question, I was
hard
like, my mind was spinning. I'm like, I have so many answers. There's so many things that I'm always trying to put into a deck. Like I think I even convinced you before we went to Knoxville. I was like, you need to put Escape Rope in there. Like, why
You
do I
did,
need
and it
Escape Rope?
saved me.
I was like, you need to put Escape Rope in there.
And it saved me. Worked really well against that RC Strauda.
See. I don't want to always pretend like I know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I like to.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But I did want to kind of also talk about just like stuff that's upcoming. Like
Yeah.
we're talking about, like we've talked a little bit about Paldea Evolved, which is their what are those pre-releases should be starting in the next like 2 or 3 weeks, which is already crazy considering when Scarlet and Violet like came out
Yes.
like last month. And so pre-releases are going to be starting to come up, so we talked a little bit about that, kind of like looked a lot more at the decks, and then also there's the Pokemon 151 collection, which is just like a bonus like collector's
Little
edition
mini
basically.
set. Yeah.
Similar to those that are like Crown Zenith, Hidden Fates, Shining whatever those were always called, Shining Fates, Hidden Fates, all the Fates.
Yep.
And now it's Pokemon card 151 Fates. And is there like anything, and I've got this pulled up of just the different stuff that we've kind of already seen a little bit of. Is there anything that you've seen that you are like really excited about, and or anything that you're like really curious about?
Yes. So there's two. One of them makes me mad because I already have all of the decks that I want to play this season. I've already
Okay.
built them. I've got like 4 decks, and Venusaur EX I think looks really fun. He's a poison grass. I love all grass types. I love all poison types. It's a lot of fun. Bulbasaur's probably my favorite starter, so it's like, of course, I have to build the Venusaur EX deck. And the card itself looks really cool. I think that there's some really fun things you can do with it, and it is going to live solidly in meme tier. Like, it's never going to be a top deck, but I live solidly in meme tier, and I
That's
think
true.
that I can do some really cool things with that Venusaur EX. And so I see a lot of possibilities with it. So I'm excited, and I want to actually like get my hands on it and play with it.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure. I don't know. That is one of the ones that I have that I'm really excited about.
I'm also so interested with the Venusaur EX. It has, you can heal 60 from one Pokemon. There's that card that's coming out in Paldea Evolved. I don't remember what it's called, but you can heal 60 from a Pokemon if you're behind. behind in prize cards. You've got Radiant Serena, and then you've also got Leftovers. So effectively, like in one turn, you can heal almost 140 damage. And then even on top of that, there's like Crystal Cave that you can, depending on what Pokemon it is, you can heal even more from that.
And there's the Nacleo line, or the however you say the Salt Boys line, that as he evolves,
Salty Boys.
Like as he evolves, he heals, and so it's like you can have Venusaur hitting, poisoning, and then you're like, oh, you thought you had me? My Salty Boy is showing how salty you are. Look, you can't. I'm back. And it's like it's just there's something there, and I'm real excited to play with it.
Not to mention he has 340 hit points, which is like there's not a ton that really swings over 340 hit points, which also one thing that I've noticed about these that gets me really excited is you've got Venusaur that's got 340 hit points, you've got Charizard with 330, you've got Blastoise with 330 that takes 30 less damage from attacks, and like these cards, even though they're kind of more of like in the collector's set and don't really necessarily have like typically have like the highest playability, the coolest thing to me is it's like these are they go back to like the rock paper scissors of Pokemon, which like when you are building your decks, it's like you're thinking about the meta, what are you like going to go up against, and like you can totally win tournaments and like even just like games just because your Pokemon resists or is like they don't have the weakness to whatever is like the strongest thing that's out there, or you can totally win because you have and bring the weakness of something, even if it's not the superior deck, to something that is like stronger than it. And like with Venusaur, I've been saying this a lot, fire is not good. It's not good right now. Nope. And I've been trying my hardest to make it work, and so it will take a lot to actually swing over a 340. You have to hit a 170 on a fire Pokemon. Not a lot of Pokemon even hit 170 for fire types because they're bad. And so it's like you've got a ton of potential with like this kind of thing. Curious, like I know that you typically lean more towards like the poison kind of strats and like the just out healing, outlasting kind of things. So in your like what about this is like the big draw for you besides it being a big grass boy? What would you put with it?
A couple of different ideas. My favorite thing that I've thought about so far is that it's like you said, the Serena, I would put Sneasler because you want to jump that poison count up. But what I would really think would be really fun, and I've had a lot of fun with currently playing a Toxicroak EX deck, is the mucks. That there's the one muck that once you are poisoned, your retreat cost goes up. And we are in such a heavy retreat format that like switches are now being mandated to be played because there's so many cards that do this kind of thing. So it's like you can hit somebody for 150, up their poison to 3 per turn with the Sneasler, and then with the muck, force them to be stuck up there, force them to have to switch their way out, then they can't even hit you back because they're confused. Is that it's like you can make it so that you are truly stalling them out with the way a good poison deck should do it. And so it's like I think that I don't know, that's currently what I'm thinking about is running that muck in there, running the just kind of manipulating damage with the Sneasler. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then also, isn't there like a muck, or I don't know if it's a muck, but there's another dark type card that is either coming out or already came out that gives oh my goodness, what is that called? It gives like it makes it so they can't get rid of the poison even if they evolve.
It's another muck. So there's a muck that...
Look at that. You got all the throwing all the mucks in there.
Currently, that's what my Toxicroak deck is that it's like I'll hit you with the Toxicroak, and then I've got at least one muck that ups your retreat cost, and I've got at least one muck that means you can't evolve or devolve out of it. So like you're stuck.
That's hilarious. That is so funny. Yeah. And so I think that Venusaur, I think that it's one that people are just gonna like, kind of like laugh off a little bit and has potential. Charizard.
Will it be good? No, it'll be fun though.
Yeah, no. Charizard. It looks fine. Like it just you get too little from getting into a stage 2, and by the time you actually get all 4 of those energy onto it, it's like really really hard. Unless if you're using Arceus, there you go. Then just kind of like from this list, there's also Blastoise, which Blastoise looks interesting, but I don't know why you would play Blastoise over like Chin-Pao when it does almost virtually like very similar damage as things are coming in. And so
because if you like Blastoise better.
Yeah.
I think that is more of the nostalgia Pokemon than anything else.
Hmm. And then right now, of the only ones that we've really kind of like been released that I've kind of like seen any kind of interest in from like myself personally, they were released today, and it was the Starmie that lets you
That
put
was the
two
other one.
damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If you place any damage counters in this way, discard this Pokemon and all attached cards. And so this was the one that I was really big on. Because I mean, we've seen some of the other ones and they're fine, but the cool thing about this is you like this makes it so you can kind of streamline Inteleon VMAX, which is what
Yeah.
I wanted to play for a long time. So you've got this, which like you can toss this in there and you can play a heavier line of Irida and alongside your your octopus and alongside your like your gun lizard, and making sure that you're actually like hitting for
James
the
Bond was he's James Bond.
hitting for the relevant damage where you're going. You've got Mr. Spoons moving it all around wherever you need it to go. And then with this, you can also play Rescue Carrier, which is also an item which could be searched out by Irida. And so there's tons and tons and tons of potential for this to actually hit those relevant numbers. And you can take the bears out, so then you don't necessarily have that fighting weakness like randomness in there that wasn't really answering any questions besides just for like Regieleki. But like now you can kind of still spread a little bit more of just like the damage counters around. Maybe still keep the oh man, who's Mr. High Jump Kick? What's his name? Metacham. Keep the Metacham V and Mr. High Jump.
Keep him relevant.
Well, let me say Mr. High Jump Kick version 2. We already had High Jump Kick version 1 with Hitmonlee, but High Jump Kick version 2 goes on in there. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of potential with just the damage moving things around, and I got really excited because I was just thinking like, yeah, imagine you play so many of the Starmie, you put one Starmie down, or you put one Staryu down, you put another Staryu down, you evolve that Starmie next turn, that Starmie goes away, then you use Rescue Carrier to get them both back, put one down, you evolve the other one, throw both of those away, and then you can just keep cycling it back and forth.
Well, it's also the reason I got excited about it because like I don't damage spread, I don't water. That's not. I guess I damage spread because I play poison, but it's like that's not my playstyle. The reason I was excited is because this card is how I did everything with Lilligant. That's this, but in a modern format.
Yep.
And so it's like the reason this card was so good, this Flapple was so good, was that what you could do is that if they took a knockout or if you had to hide, you could send that up to the active spot. If they killed it, they took one prize. If they didn't, you could shuffle it back into your deck and drop 2 damage counters. This one, you just shuffle it to the discard pile and do 2 damage counters, and it's a pivot. And so it's like, I would use that as a pivot in everything.
Oh, 100%.
And then Miriam it back in. And so it's like, you can do it twice, Miriam back in, so that you have them locked and loaded to go again. You're seeing more cards. Like, that is such a good pivot card in a format where people aren't playing Switch and people are trying to get you stuck. People are trying to do these things. If you can send up that Staryu and then be like, you thought? And then pull it back out, send up what you wanted to send out, and drop the damage counters to weaken stuff up. Like, I'm so excited for that card.
Mm-hmm. Especially like with Venusaur being one of like the really main healing cards, there's not like you could even use it to just kind of like help to clean up numbers. Like there is Collapse Stadium, there's Penny, there's opportunities for people to be able to like knock things out. But I mean, toss a Starmie in there against the Gardevoir deck, and what is Gardevoir like? Gardevoir's gonna have to think twice about the actual damage that it's putting on things, because now you might just have a Starmie that's just going to come on down, knock somebody out, and they just lost their Zacian that already had all that like damage stacked up on
They're
it.
just sitting there. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like that's the card to me that's like I think that is the most hype one that I've seen. There's everything else is kind of like except for like Erica's Invitation. I think that card's broken, but
I'm excited for that card.
yeah. So
I'm going to be mad to play against that card, but I'm excited for it.
I'm interested to see kind of like where the texts go and where they come from, especially if cards like Penny become so much more relevant. Because if Penny becomes so much more relevant, it's like, all right, I know you have that in there. Get back out here. I'm not done with you yet.
Stay down. Final warning.
So there's and I mean it's still very early on. There's a lot of cards that they are coming out with that they're going to be like actually creating and producing. And so once the set actually gets 100% release, we'll probably go over a few more of the cards. But all in all, I just I'm excited to see kind of like where it goes. I know that there's been a lot of people who have already like kind of covered it, gone over with like a lot of the speculations. I think we're gonna wait until we actually get the full list to kind of like really go over and review for different things, because there's no sense in sitting here looking at a blurry picture of like, what do you think this card's gonna be? I don't know. What do you think this card's gonna be? I don't know. Let's see what happens and find out. So
5 months later, we were both wrong.
oh man, I know. Oh, 5 months. I can't even believe it's gonna be like that long. I think it actually comes out in late June. So
Does it?
I think so. It's because
Hey,
like you
Evolved
got.
is early.
I know. I think maybe it's late July. I don't remember 100%.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna look that up now. But I'm pretty
Like,
sure.
I don't think we get this until the fall.
Mm-hmm. Pokemon card 151 release date. It is June 16th
For Japan, not for us.
for Japan.
Yeah, it's like I don't think we get it until fall.
Yeah, actually, that's true, because I guess if it is called Pokemon Card 151, it's not. It doesn't have like the TPCI name for it yet for like when that release is actually going to be coming through. Yeah, because this is later this summer after the Snow Hazard / Clay Burst expansion. So definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not for us yet. But
Yeah, we got
Dang
a
it.
while for that one.
I got so excited.
I'm trying to curb that enthusiasm.
Get back down there. Get back down there, excitement. So, but anyways, we'll see kind of like what that comes out to, and we'll do a little bit more of like a review as we get a little bit closer and have a little bit more knowledge of kind of how that does, and then we'll bring those into some things that we're excited about, maybe even seeing if like some of those cards are relevant enough to go into some decks, which honestly, they are starting to kind of seem like they are, which is like one thing I kind of wanted to bring up as we're looking at both the Pokemon card 151 set and the Paldea Evolve set, both coming out. Like, let's talk specifically for Japan. Very, very close to each other. Like,
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this special set seems like it is one of the more unique special sets that have come out in a long time, with cards that are not just specifically like different art styles, maybe like a couple of new cards that are thrown in, a couple of things for fun. You know, the good old Articuno Zapdos and Moltres GX tag team card randomly coming out from that. But
So fun.
for those of you that don't know, which is probably all of you, that was one of Dalton's favorite decks that he built back during that time. But
I have an ultra rare version of it.
probably still sleeved up and just it's memorialized, isn't it?
It's retired back there on that shelf.
It is retired.
It is an expensive retired deck because I've got like the full art Misty's Favor, the full art Welders in there. It's like that deck is worth so much money.
Oh yeah.
And it is currently sleeved up in crappy Pokemon sleeves back there on the deck.
Hey, that's the
Super,
best way
like,
to do it.
Yeah, they're super torn and folded sleeves. I will riffle shuffle those bad boys.
Oh yeah, the best thing, and you've got to riffle shuffle your cards. I don't care.
Yep.
I don't care who you are. I don't care how expensive that card is. You riffle shuffle that bad boy. And so Pokemon cards are meant to be played.
Those 4 Misty's Favors have all been riffle shuffled. You're welcome, all of you listeners.
Pokemon cards deserve to be played. They are just cardboard, and if you assign any more excitement to them, then you are part of. No, I'm not gonna say you're part of the problem. You can play with your cards however you want to. I'm going to riffle shuffle my cards, and if you get mad at me for that, then that's on you. Anyways, rant done. And so what I was getting at was, this is like, in my eyes, this set looks to be, and like I said, we don't know a lot of stuff about it, but it looks to be one of the most like impactful special sets that we've had in a while. Like, that's actually has high potential to not only impact on a collector's side and the collector's market, but also high impact on like a playing side market. And so, like, do you think that this is like really, really good for the game? Do you think that this is like could potentially be bad for the game, or what do you think?
I think it's really good for the game because, like, if we're going to keep it specifically in the Japan market, so it's like we get Shining Fates, Hidden Fates, Crown Zenith, we get all of those things over here, which is an amalgamation of their special sets plus some stuff.
Right.
But it's like, if you're going to keep it specifically in the Japan market, they've got stuff like the VMAX Climax kind of thing, where they're like, hey, look at all of these good cards that have been around. Here's the alternate art version of them. That it's like they've got all of that fun stuff. Like, that is their special sets. And I think that the only other one that I can think of that is similar to what they're doing here in recent memory is Champion's Path.
Yeah.
And what Champion's Path did was they took the idea of you, the player, going on the Champion's Path beating the gym leaders, so they have all the boxes that are the gym leaders, and then ultimately going up against the champion. And doing so, they gave us some, like, it was a cool concept, but the cards didn't necessarily back that up.
Yep.
Whereas this one, instead, what they're doing is they're saying, here are Gen 1, in case you didn't know they're our favorite Gen.
Hmm.
Here's all the cards that we've not yet released for them, and they're giving us some really cool, relevant things because they do love Gen 1. Like, Charizard's always going to get something good. This Charizard's okay. But it's like
He's
Venusaur and
fine.
Blastoise. But this Venusaur and Blastoise are both decent. Like, they're giving us good, decent things because
Hmm.
they want Gen 1 to be relevant. And I was actually talking to one of my students about this today, that as a older sorry about my dog. As an older Pokemon player, I will 1 second.
Technical difficulties. We've got dogs. That's just part of it. Welcome to the live podcast.
As an older player, I remember Gen 1 and I have some nostalgia attached to it because the first Pokemon game I played was Pokemon Blue.
Mhm.
But at the same time, that was 20 something years ago. And so you have to find a way to make that relevant for our
Oh yeah.
modern audience who is not around 20 something years ago playing Pokemon Blue. And so I think that's what they're doing here is that honestly, this feels like it should have come out last year
Hmm.
in the 25th anniversary, but it didn't. And I think that that's why we're getting it here is that we're making it really cool. We're doing all of these kind of fun things and saying, hey, look at what we were, and let's make those relevant. Let's go back to the early version of the game.
Yeah. No, that's true. Because I would like the only concern that I had was I was like, all right, it's a collector's edition, which typically more people want, more people like want to come on in, scalp and sell, which makes the cards a little bit harder to get sometimes, depending on the actual packaging and like how much they create and how much they release, and in what waves they do, and then depending on how good those cards are, that will ultimately like drive up the price. And so part of that's not great, but like the part that I'm really excited about is like the just like the impact that it's gonna have on the game. Like how you said, bringing an old flavor to like a newer audience. And so I don't know
Yeah,
why that was my analogy, but like bring bring something like older, similar to like when they did, like when they brought back the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, and also
that's
like
exactly what
like
this feels like.
like that is exactly what this is. And me personally, I everybody nobody like really loved those games. I loved those games, and so like with this kind of stuff coming in, just kind of like reinvigorating that like love for the older generations and bringing that to like the newer audience. The only concern that I have, like I said, is just like how drastic is this going to affect the actual gameplay of it, as opposed to the actual just like popularity kind of thing towards it.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, if you think about the other ones that we've had, like you've got the Arcran Zenith, our Shining Fates, Hidden Fates, their VMAX version, their GX version, like all of theirs, like we get these reprint cards, and these are great, and so we're not getting ones here. But then in every other special set, we've gotten at least one.
yeah,
It's like the Mew that everyone is playing right now is from
Celebrations Mew.
Celebrations. It's like
You have
we
to say its
always
whole
get at
name.
least
It's
one.
Celebrations Mew.
It's
It's
like
like it's
it's
like
like
it's
Mew
like
from
bench
Unbroken
berry Mew.
Bonds.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like we always get at least one, and I think the fact that we're getting more than one, at least based on the ones we've seen so far, is really cool.
Yeah. No, 100% agree. I'm excited just to kind of like see where it goes, where that takes it, and I honestly hope that they make more things like this. And that's what I've been saying for the Let's Go games is I want them to bring in more things like this that are like more fun towards the collector side of things, but then are also like competitively viable. Because my biggest thing from like celebrations, the cards that are played from the celebrations thing is like you've got Mew, I think there was like Kyogre, and then Eviltall. I think are like the main three that I can think of on a Pokemon side of it. There might have been some more items or
Zacian,
supporters.
the
Zacian.
Zacian that's played in everything. The
He
the
can be.
Guardy Zacian is from Celebrations.
That's very true. He is also from. Yep, knew that 100%.
Like the Zacian that everybody's playing right
Yeah,
now, yeah, that's from
and so
Celebrations
you
too.
got like four cards from that big set that kind of like come on in, and then like from Crown Zenith, you've got the Zamazenta. You have Radiant Eternatus that nobody plays. And then there was one other big card that came from
I've got
there.
thoughts about that card.
There's one other big card that came from that, wasn't there? There was a
Crown
third
Zenith,
one.
there was a third one. I don't remember what it
I
was.
don't remember, but um, there like you've got just like a couple cards that kind of come in and shift over, but like this is a set that is going to like shift potentially the meta. So I'm interested to see. I hope they do more like that with these special sets instead of just like make things shiny and make things with alternate arts, because that is fun, but that's ultimately just like a cash grab and doesn't necessarily like help out too much besides just the printing of different things.
It is, but it's like I like having the fun cards. I
Also
like having
fun
the
cards,
yeah. It's like I want them to do more, but at the same time,
mm-hmm.
I enjoy having the same card in a different art.
I will say also too, now that I'm countering my own argument, the more different meta cards that they come out with that like have to shift and change everything that's going on, it's gonna hurt my wallet just as much as me wanting to be like on the collector side of things. Because then I'm gonna have to get those cards to play the new decks that I now want to play, and so I don't know. My wallet's just going down the toilet regardless.
Papa Peak owns my wallet, so I mean, I just cut the checks. Like I get paid, and then I'm like, all right, Pikachu, what do you want this week? And I'll send it to them.
It's like whenever you actually get your paycheck, it takes out your Social Security, it takes out like your, I don't know, just benefits and everything, and then it's like, all right, the Pikachu, the Papa Pika tax. That's what it is when you get into any kind of card game, especially Pokemon. You gotta take out that tax.
Yep.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, we talked a lot on this. I know I like on part of our last segment that we wanted to focus on, I brought up in the last thing, but before we kind of like dive into let's build a deck, what do you have any other topics or ideas or things that you want to talk about?
No, I think that because there are other things I want to talk about, but I think they're all relevant for let's build a deck. Woo! And so I think let's say because you heard my dog barking, we're gonna throw to commercial real quick, quote unquote, and be right back with the let's build a deck. So we'll be right back with you.
It's like, all right, welcome back from our commercial break where we're gonna play Let's Build a Deck.
Build a deck.
Exactly. And so finally got it set up so that we're able to see. But it is no surprise that today's card is one of Dalton's favorite. Dalton, tell us a little bit about one of your favorite cards.
Okay, so this is my favorite card, not because it is a good card. I will preface that way. While you are on that website, I want you to go ahead and scroll up a little bit so that we can look at something. So Glaceon is my favorite Pokemon. Hands down, no questions asked. Glaceon's my favorite Pokemon. So the reason that I want this deck to work is because Glaceon's my favorite Pokemon, and I see it right there, Glaceon GX. This was my favorite deck that has existed in Pokemon cards. So I want to make this a relevant thing. I want to make this good again because that deck right there, that card that is kind of highlighted for you, that was the deck that brought me into the Pokemon TCG. So it's like I've been collecting forever. This deck right here, Freezing Gaze, Glaceon, so much fun. This was my favorite, and this is actually the reason Glaceon's my favorite Pokemon, was because Glaceon was not in Pokemon Blue, obviously. And so when I started playing the TCG...
But it's a blue Pokemon.
Right? When I started playing the TCG, actually, this is the deck that I built and I loved. And so since then, Glaceon has been my favorite Pokemon. And it is because of that card right there. And so, after that card rotated forever ago, I have wanted it to be relevant for so long. And then Glaceon got a V, and it looks like this. And it's beautiful. And I wanted it to be good, and it's not. And so that's what we're doing today, is we're going to make it good. Between the two of us, we've got this. We can make this the best deck in the world. But, well,
hold on. You remember the rules? Remember the rules of Let's Build a Deck. Basically, we're not gonna give you a deck that's going to win tournaments every single time. But
you shut your mouth.
But
this deck is gonna win it all. Worlds 2024.
The purpose of Let's Build a Deck is we want to take cards that are more underrated from kind of when their times are coming in, especially for cards that have been our favorites. And I did this with Vulpix. This is how I built the deck that I did do really well with in locals and did really well with over in Knoxville. And the main purpose of this is how do we maximize the potential of what this deck is? How do we make it work? And then how do we make it actually fun? Which Glaceon has tons and tons of potential. So I wanted to put that asterisk on there so that people don't get all mad in the comments of I took this Glaceon, this thing sucks. And it's well, you're not getting your money back from this. So
maybe Glaceon didn't suck. Maybe you're just a bad pilot. That's all I'm saying. That sounds like a skill issue.
Honestly, I can't play your decks. I don't know. I don't know how you beat me with your decks all the time. I'm this is insane.
At the end of the day, if you're not both mad, you didn't play right. I mean, it sounds like a skill issue.
Exactly. And so we're diving on into Glaceon V. And so basically what Glaceon V does is just the V card of it is it's got Frozen Awakening, so you can search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon, put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it, shuffle your deck. Obviously, it ends your turn. But there is just a couple of options, really, that are in the standard format. So you've got the Glaceon V-Star and the Glaceon V-Max. Dalton's holding them up. And so, Dalton, tell us a little bit about the V-Star first, and then we'll go into the V-Max as well as I pull them up.
So the V-Star is your primary attacker in this deck. The V-Star, what it does is 180 damage. It does this Icicle Shot, and during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. And so what you're doing is you are hitting them for 180, which kills the support Pokemon, or kind of get somebody stuck and they can't retreat. So like we talked about earlier this episode, there's not a whole lot of heavy switching. Like switching is becoming more and more mandatory because there's just no one's doing it. People are running things like Beach Court. People are running things like the double turbo to attach, pull back. And so what Glaceon's doing is saying, you're stuck. You can't get out. I'm 180ing, and I'm going to hit you again next turn and take you out.
Oh, yeah.
And then once per game, you've got your V-Star attack, which does 220, which is one of the magic numbers of Pokemon. So you're knocking out most Pokemon Vs. And then also, you're not taking damage on your next turn.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so the Glaceon V-Star, it's really good for just that quick little locking somebody into place. It's kind of like the Mawile that's been really popularized by the Lost Box decks, but, you know, with extra damage on top of that. And then also there is the... I gotta click the right parts of it. There is the VMAX as well, which what this does is it prevents all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon VMAX, except any Glaceon VMAX, and then it does 150 to the active and then 30 to the bench. And so this is kind of what we were talking about a little bit. This is why, if you know me, I've been trying to make Zeraora V, Star, and VMAX work for the longest time, and this was one of the other like sides of it where you have like you've got the V-Star of the Pokemon as well as the VMAX, which you've got different options for different things to be able to play against it and fight against it and fight against different things. And so this is a walling off Pokemon, very similar. It goes off with the Glaceon GX that we were just talking about, one of Dalton's favorite cards. So instead of it walling off the GX and EX Pokemon, big EX, not to be confused with little EX, it is walling off the VMAX Pokemon. And so this card it's gonna be a little bit relevant for some of the matchups, and so we'll talk a little bit more about kind of like how, when I'm like trying to maximize the counts of different cards, not only just maximize the playability of it, we'll go into a little bit of that of like what's actually going to be the best case scenario for different things. So
yeah,
in my opinion, one of the best ways to start it off with the card that you're trying to play around it, typically you want to have 4 of that in there. So I'm going to go ahead and add in 4 of the Frozen Awakening Glaceon, because the other Glaceon is bad. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it.
I will up front and say the other side. I want a 3-1.
You want a 3-1 of this one.
I think having one of that one. I think one of Butt Glaceon is good.
Butt Glaceon, okay.
Because while it does not evolve, what you're doing is you're getting that second energy, which means on your next turn you will have 3 energy and you're coming in and you're attacking. You don't want that every turn. You don't want that every game. But I think a 3-1 is correct, or a 2-1. I think that having one of the other helps.
Okay. And so we've got the 3. Let's start it off with then. We've got 3 of the Glaceon that evolves. And we've got 1 Butt Glaceon, which gets you a little bit more water. And then I think that probably either a 2 or a 3 of the Glaceon. I would say probably a 2 of the Glaceon V-Star, and then maybe a 1 of the VMAX. Just in case.
You only want 1 VMAX, yeah.
Yeah, at most you want 1 VMAX. Sometimes you might even be able to cut the VMAX just in case. And then also, another card that I forgot about this, I'm going to toss 1 in here for us to kind of come back to, is, whoops, did not work, it is the tool card that is specific just to Glaceon, and it has no recruit cost and no weakness. This is going to be
Which is
helpful for certain matchups, but not like it's not as incredibly helpful as other people would necessarily think that it will be, but it will be helpful in specific matchups, especially against things like the Zamazenta, the Crown Zenith Zamazenta, as well as the Dialga V Origin form that are kind of the more prominent metal attacking cards that are out there right now. Turns off the weakness, and also it lets you be able to retreat it away into something else. So
I think that's the bigger thing, is that it's like that Zamazenta helps, like that hits, that will be the one you're worried about, but like being able to run away, especially when you're locking them, is so nice.
Oh yeah. And so the next thing that we kind of want to look into, and we'll add more of these if we go back in and we decide that this is what we're actually going to want, but the next kind of question is the consistency question, in my opinion. So what I'm always trying to think through is with Glaceon, V-Star, V-Max, Glaceon with but Glaceon, one thing that's all true about all of these Pokemon is they all use water energy, and they are all Pokemon V. And so there's an excellent card that goes well with the water Pokemon and water Pokemon V, and in my opinion, that is Melanie, which I think, personally, that you want to run at least 2 to 3 of these, maybe even 4 at one point. I would say 3 is probably the max that you'll really want, because there's another great card that I'll dive into in a second that will also really help this out. But what Melanie does, if you have a water energy in your discard pile, then you can attach that to one of your Pokemon V, and keep in mind, V-Star and V-Max also count as Pokemon V. Then you get to also draw 3 cards. So on top of attaching, you're also going to be able to draw 3 cards. So
you at least want 3 of that.
Oh yeah, I would say 3 is probably really good, because the next card that I would go in there for consistency of really being able to help this thing out is there's another super broken water supporter card out there.
There's a couple of the cards. But
it is right here. Irida. I think this is one of the most broken cards in the game. This is like Arven is really, really good. We talked about like the potential of Arven, it being like the 61st card. This is your 10th card that goes in there. If you decide you're playing a water deck, more often than not, you're going to want Irida in it. Yes. More often than not. There could be an exception, but
I will also say Irida is one of my favorite characters in all of Pokemon for one reason and one reason only. Her partner is a Glaceon in the game. True. Which means if you're building a Glaceon deck, you know who you really need? You need the one who's partnered with Glaceon.
Oh yeah.
I would put a 2 of count for her.
You think a 2 of?
I think a 2 of for now.
Okay. I think that either let's start with 2, because right now all Irida is getting out is it's getting these guys. Yeah. This is more of an energy acceleration. This is more of a finding of your boys. So or girls. I don't know what these things are. But with
these ice foxes.
Do what?
These ice foxes.
These ice foxes. So moving away from kind of like those first 2 supporters, some really easy ones that also kind of like toss in there, just research, Professor's Research, a great one. Do you have a preferred Professor's Research? This is your deck, so I want to make it. It is
my deck. Juniper is the best Professor's Research besides Seda. I mean, Seda's fun, Tulio's fun, but Juniper, right there, Gen 5 representation.
There we go. So we got Juniper, tossing her in there. We're gonna start off with 1, being able to change that on up, and then also another great card to toss in there in almost any deck is you've got Boss's Orders.
Yep, and I would throw a Cyrus in there.
We got Cyrus popping on in there. So we got Cyrus. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. And then so far, you've got a good just kind of lineup of different supporters that can kind of start to help you out. Typically, there is a magic number of supporters. This is not a hard and fast rule, but there is typically a magic number of supporter cards that most decks really want to run. And so, Dalton, what is your magic number for supporters? Because I've got one in mind, but
I don't have one in mind. But I would say, quick maths off of what I do, I would say if you have more than 9, you have too many.
Okay. I typically aim for somewhere between I would say like 8 to 11 is typically where I aim for my supporter counts, because it adds
Yeah.
enough of the consistency, and then also like you can go with a lower count and you can play pal pad, or you can go with a little bit of a higher count. And so, off of the top of your head, are there any other supporter cards that you can think of that can really go in and mesh well with this deck?
Well, there are two more because I've tried to build this deck a couple times. So there are two more that I would include. One of is Clara. I
Clara.
think that earlier we talked about what is your 61st card. I think Clara is my 63rd.
Okay.
That I think Clara is a phenomenal card in almost any deck. That this is a great Pokemon recovery. This is a great energy recovery because it comes back to hand instead of into deck. I think Clara is better than Miriam. I would want at least one Clara in this deck.
Okay.
And
And
the
then
other one would be Judge. I think that Judge currently is just you need Judge. Until Iono comes out, Judge is going to be the thing that kind of shuts down your opponent, what they're doing, and especially with Glaceon trying to get you stuck up in the active spot, you want to stop them. And I think you need at least one Judge.
do you have a favorite judge?
I really am partial to the Sun and Moon Judge, which is the guy
This
who's
is this
yellow
one,
shirt.
right? Oh, is this
Other
the
one.
Sun and Moon? Is this
Yep.
older than Sun and Moon? Yeah, this is the like more
XY.
area. Yep. So we've got this judge, the Forbidden Light judge. Shuffle in 4 cards into the deck. So this is our main, like you said, this is our main disruption card kind of coming out right now. Until we have Iono, which honestly would even help to make this deck kind of flourish even farther than that.
Yep.
So right now we're looking at a pretty good supporter line. I feel like some of these don't necessarily have to be in here, but this is always like a good start for it, of like when you're thinking through what do I actually put in this deck, like what are the cards that are going to be helpful, how many of them do I need is then the next question, and then then the next question after that is how will I find these cards. So the Glaceon used to thrive under the Shady Dealings engine because,
Yep.
with Irida mixed with that, it was very easy to be able to search out literally every single card that you can really think of. Right now, we've lost the Shady Dealings engine, and so we're kind of looking at a few different engines currently. So as of right now, the draw engines for different things. You have the Lost Zone engine, and so you've got different things where you can play things like Comfy. Oh, these are older Lost Zone engines. You've got different things like Comfy that you're able to look at and draw, or look at the top 2 cards, put one into the Lost Zone, and then that leads you into our Mirage Gate. But if you're using Mirage Gate, then you have to use multiple different types of energy, and I don't really know if that's going to be the route that we really want to go with
Right.
that. And so, especially if we're playing Melanie. I mean, we could also play Cramorant, which is another water Pokemon, but I don't think that's a good idea because we have to commit a lot more to Colress's experiment, and there's all kinds of different stuff that kind of goes from there. So,
Right.
another great draw engine that is very, very solid. I think I said it earlier, this is my draw engine of choice. If I had to put just any 2 cards into a deck, it is the B-Barrel with the Industrious Incisors. So it lets you just draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. So as long as
Always
you are
solid.
getting rid of cards, you've got 5 cards in your hand, good to go. And so I don't know necessarily if this is going to be our best choice, but this is definitely a choice. This is definitely an option. And I'll go into it why it's not the best option, in my opinion. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, as well as there is the Revavroom. I did not spell this right. Who let me type things? We've got Revavroom, which has got the Rumbling Engine ability. So similar to B-Barrel, you discard a card, and then you can draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. This would go really, really well over with your Melanie engine. So being able to discard a water energy. Now you have an extra water energy in the discard, and you're able to go back into that and get a lot of those different things. And then one of the other main current draw engines right now is also the Curlias. So I don't know what the best one currently is, because with Curlia, you're able to refinement, get rid of 2 cards. You could even go into a Gardevoir, which lets you to accelerate even more energy on top of that off the top of your deck. So in my opinion, there's a couple of different options, a couple of different choices. I'm leaning a little bit towards potentially a Curlia or potentially a Revavroom, but do you have any thoughts? Do you have any opinions on helping to cycle through the deck and getting the different cards?
I do, and I've also got one you kind of forgot,
Mm.
which is I think that Arceus V Star, what we talked about earlier, this is the partner that Arceus has been looking for.
Okay.
I think that Arceus V Star, what it is doing, it is bringing in these ideas of accelerating your 3 energy. That I think this could be a very good Arceus partner. I think that Arceus V Star coming in and hitting these 3 basic water energies out of your deck throws it in. The only problem is, like we talked about before, this is a 2 prize liability on your bench.
Yep.
And so I would say either the Arceus is the move or the Reverum is the
Okay.
move. I think that Reverum, that draw to 6 is great, and then having the ability to throw the water from Melanie down is great. But I think that Arceus V Star is probably the optimal move here.
Oh yeah. No, I think Arceus V Star is great. Arceus V Star also requires certain things like, the Arceus V. And typically, what I've been playing in my Arceus V Star list is I've got a 4-2. You might even go up into a 4-3. We'll start with a 4-3, and we can always work our way back down, just kind of depending on the different things that go in with that. And one of the nice things about running the Arceus V Star is you'll need less Melanie overall. It turns Melanie into a little bit more of a tech card so that you don't necessarily have to play around relying on the Melanie to be there. You can play around relying more on the consistency of the Arceus to actually be there as well. And so
right, Melanie becomes the late game play, not the I need this turn 2 play.
Mm-hmm. And then with Arceus, if Arceus is the way that we're going to kind of lean towards and kind of lean into, you have to have double turbo energy. Well, I guess you don't have to have it, but you're wrong if you don't have it. It's kind of what I'll tell you. And so you're able to go in there. Do what?
I agree with that, but it's also because it's like, look at Glaceon V and Glaceon VMAX both. Mm-hmm. They both have an attack that is a water and 2 colorless, which means your double turbo also charges your Glaceon in the late game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so on top of this also goes into kind of like what we were saying with the Glaceon V-Star and the Glaceon V-Max can help to kind of clean up a little bit more of the damage that is going into here, which has been kind of like the nice part of with Arceus. When you're accelerating the energy, you're hitting for 180. Like, you're doing 180 damage, and then after that, once you get the energy on there, doing another 180 and or a 150 in a snipe. So it's like you're hitting that 180, or you're hitting that 210 with the Arceus V-Star if you add in a choice belt. And then also you're able to clean up with a 30 damage snipe with a max icicle, also walling off some VMAXs, which can help a little bit more in the like Regieleki VMAX decks. And so there's a lot of just different mind games, different playing for different things that you can kind of think through. So yeah, I love the Arceus V-Star side of things. The only recommendation I would say, I actually don't think that we need as many Glaceon V.
If you've got that Arceus, no, yeah.
Because then this way you can start to get more Glaceon actually on the board, because you're ideally not using Frozen Awakening. You're ideally having your energy attached to your Arceus V and then evolving with the actual Glaceon V into a V-Star later. So
yeah,
perfect. So now we've kind of got a little bit more of the feel for it. In my opinion, if we're switching this over to having Arceus V and V-Star as kind of more of the acceleration of energy and more of the engine towards how it's going to work, then we're definitely going to need a lot more research.
Yes. I would say we probably want 3 research. I think that is the magic number here, because we're trying to throw things away. We want to get that Arceus as quickly as we can. I think a 3 of the research is the move.
Honestly, I would even say if we go up into a 4 of, just because I think that having a 4 of the research, just the extra added consistency of like turn 1 going second, or turn 2, kind of more that guarantee of if I don't have my Arceus in my starting hand, I need to get to that Arceus, because everything kind of starts with that Arceus. And for me, also very similarly, I think that Judge is a great card that also helps to like disrupt once you get into a certain thing with like the rest of your guys. And honestly, if we're moving away from like having more water Pokemon on our side of the bench, we don't necessarily even really need Irida anymore, because Irida only really searches out the Glaceons and using the supporters, you'd almost rather use a different supporter for turn.
Yes, but I want to bring it back. I have an idea
Mm-hmm.
for a spicy deck that Irida helps with. And that is right here. I think this is the card to
Starmie.
play. I think that Starmie V is what's going to help make this deck relevant. I
Okay.
think that Glaceon on its own can do some stuff, but it doesn't quite get there. I think that Starmie's V Swift being able to hit through if you ever happen to come upon somebody who's trying to wall you off. And I think that being able to come through with that energy spiral,
Hmm.
especially in a Lugia heavy format, this is the card that is going to help get you over the edge because doing that extra 50 damage for each energy in a Lugia heavy format, you're hitting the numbers you want to hit
Hmm.
pretty consistent.
Not only with Lugia, but you're also able to use it against a Gardevoir deck that's like loading up all of that energy onto like a Zacian or onto a Gardevoir, and then you can just switch it around and be able to like boss up. You can boss his orders up the oh my goodness, what is the name of that card? You can boss his orders up the Gardevoir EX. So then you're
Yep.
able to use the energy spiral, using that damage on that. You'll get knocked back out, but then now they don't have any energy acceleration, so then you're able to take out the next knockout coming on in and coming on through. So, my only question is, for me, I would imagine that without using Irida, I would say you would want to like more prioritize Melanie in this case, so that you're not having to Irida for it, put it on the bench, attack with the Arceus, so then you're like one turn behind on your Starmie.
True.
You can use Starmie as like the backup thing where it's like, all right, I am going to Ultra Ball I'm gonna Ultra Ball, Capturing Aroma, whatever the Nest Ball for the Starmie, slap that thing down on my bench, Melanie to it, attach an energy, and we're good to go and we're swinging. So for me, I would say Irida is maybe a 1 at the most, but honestly, I would say Melanie is a much higher priority than the Starmie itself, or than the Irida
Yeah.
itself.
I think Melanie is a big one. We definitely need at least two or three of Melanie. I think Irida, if we have room at the end, we want a one of.
Yeah. Let's say I accidentally took out the boss's orders. I'm gonna add in a second one of the boss's orders. And so what are we at right now? We've got 4, 6, 8, 10. Ooh, we've got 11. So we can go down on something else in just a second. But 11, that's my max. It's my capping out for supports. So we can either change some up, we can add some different things in. I think that you definitely need 2 boss's orders to be able to hit those numbers on different things so that you have a little bit more targeted.
The only card we're missing that I like to put into most decks, and I think that it would come in at the expense of one of our 2 judges, is a Serena. I think Serena is a really solid card because you're pulling up a lot of those Vs, but it's also in a deck where you're trying to run Melanie and you're trying to pull that water back from discard that you want to find a way to get that down. I think that Serena is a very good one of, so maybe 1 judge, 1 Serena.
So we could either go 1 judge, 1 Serena, or we can get rid of the Clara, which I personally feel like you want to have more of those things in your discard pile.
Yeah.
And so you want to keep your energy more often than not in your discard pile. In the Pokemon, if you're getting the Pokemon back, by the time that you're actually getting those Pokemon back, you're probably already too far behind to actually keep those attackers in my opinion. That's fair. The only thing that the only counter to that is if you lose Starmie early, you're out the Starmie, but then you just have to like play around not having the Starmie. And so, similar to how you said earlier, just, pilot the deck better. So,
sounds like a skill issue.
Does sound like a skill issue. And so we've got kind of a little bit of our main line. The only other things that I would add into here is that we can add in a Radiant card. And I think a great Radiant card to add into this is he's a water attacker, and he also helps get the energy into the discard. There's one other choice and one other option that I think that we can use, so I'll talk about the first one first. But there is Radiant Greninja, and so Radiant Greninja, he is the all-star of all of the Radiants, in my opinion. It's him. There's Charizard that's kind of close behind him, and then there's some other ones that kind of like piddle around a little bit lower. So, but with Radiant Greninja, you're able to put a energy card into the discard, and then you can draw two cards. You can also use the water energy, we've been talking about this entire time, as part of the attack where you're going to do 90 to different Pokemon onto the bench. And so, or not even onto the bench, just 90 to 2 Pokemon. So if there
one
is
up top, one on the bottom, wherever.
Lost Box player that's not expecting it, that's 2 Comfies. That's 2 Comfies right there that they weren't expecting, because they always prize the Manaphy. They never have it.
No, and if it's a Gardevoir player, they never have the Manaphy either. Take 2 Curlius, just right there.
They want to have 4 Ralts out there. They don't have any room for the Manaphy. They don't got the Manaphy like that.
They don't.
So there's this. The only other card that I can really think of that might actually potentially help in here that I've used for a couple of different cards is Radiant Gardevoir. So, it does let me put 2 Radiants in here. All right, that's cool. It's Radiant Gardevoir. So all of your Pokemon take 20 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. This just kind of helps let them live a little bit longer, just in case, but in this kind of matchup, in this kind of thing, that's not necessarily... I don't think it's going to help to change a ton of the different numbers, but it would be another contender just in case. There's also the, discard a water energy, put 2 damage counters onto any of those Pokemon. Not ideal, not great. You've got Astral Misfortune, can flip some coins, but not really ideal.
I'm always down for coin flipping, but that might not be the move here.
So
Venusaur might be okay, like Venusaur to kind of get that consistency, but also if you're relying on that, something's gone wrong. So
and that's why, like, if there is any room at the very end, like how you said, if there's room for Irida, if there's room for maybe even like a very light B-Barrel line that kind of like rounds different things out, if we need to change up the numbers on anything, kind of helps a little bit of the consistency of the draw engine for it. I think that could potentially help and could potentially go in there, but outside of this, I don't think that there's really a better choice than our Radiant Greninja. There's only one other water Pokemon that I would consider for this kind of like lineup, and I don't like this card. I'm strongly against it, but I know it's a favorite in a lot of different people's. It is the Empoleon, which helps out with just kind of slowing down the like Lost Box engines. The only reason I don't love this card, even though it can swing, even though it just needs the water and the double colorless to hit for 110, which knocks out your Cramorants and kind of below, so that includes like the Cramorant, Sableye, Comfies, even the Haluchas that come on in. It's not great. It's not a very good card. You also can't just play one, which is the biggest issue. Like, because if they have Escape Rope, which most Lost Zone decks already have Escape Rope, then they've already kind of got an out to it. They don't even have to play like a boss. They don't have to play a supporter. It's just a like 1 card, and they play 4 of them, and they're probably going to be able to get to the 4 of them regardless. And so, in my opinion, I think that the healthier tech is the Starmie over the Empoleon. But if, as you're watching this, if you want to add this into your deck, if you think that, like, no, Austin's wrong, and, never wrong about Empoleon, Empoleon's bad. Empoleon, man, bad.
Empoleon's bad.
That is also another option that can kind of go in there. But I think we're good to kind of... Oh, sorry.
The only other Pokemon I would think about, the only one, I'm surprised you didn't think about it, because I had it in my version of it that didn't run well, is I had a 1-1 line of these boys. I think the 1-1 I think helps. I think that, like, actually running, like, a Vulpix deck, not good. But, like,
the
1-1...
Hey, now!
If you're trying to build Glaceon, Vulpix is not the move. But I think a 1-1 tech, if you've got room, I think that's the spice that's going to get you there and get you over the edge.
Okay. I mean, I do like it. I love me some Vulpix. I think Vulpix is amazing. I think Vulpix is great. It also does the 1 energy with a double turbo. It also helps to answer a lot of the different, matches that are similar to, like it's an easy win against a Gardevoir. It is an easy win against, Miraidon. It is an easy win against Goodra. It just really helps to be able to make people have to play around certain just dumb mechanics and dumb things that are going on into it. So I personally, I like it. I like it a lot. I wasn't going to put it in there because I wanted the shining light of this deck to be Glaceon, but this does help to answer out a little bit of things. This was going to be, like, I was actually saving this to be something that we discussed, like, more near the end if we had space on in there. But I love it.
See,
I love these cards.
I think having the Glaceon engine, I think having Arceus backup Glaceon, and then having Starmie and having Vulpix for like your spicy techs, that it's like this answers a lot of the meta. Glaceon can handle most of the heavy lifting, but if you need somebody else, you've got either Vulpix or you've got Starmie. I think that's what you need. I think that will make this deck sing, and that's why Glaceon's not been seen. It's because we don't see a lot of these kind of things. It's not great on its own. So you need these other cards, and I think these are the two that help.
I agree. No, I 100% agree. I think these are fantastic techs, not just because I'm a big Vulpix enjoyer, but I think these are actually really good answers to things that you'll probably see that like will make Glaceon struggle. So moving a little bit more on to the just engine to help make this. It's the not just the cards themselves, but it's not just the Pokemon themselves, but it is also the like it's the trainers that kind of go along with it. We talked a little bit about the supporters. Nest Ball, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it onto your bench. You need this card because this helps to give you outs to Starmie, Greninja, Arceus V, and your Glaceon, and also your Vulpix. Helps to get them out as fast as you possibly can. And really the main strategy of this is Arceus V Star, like Arceus V Star. So I want to start off with Arceus V. Personally, I would say we need 4 of these. And or Battle VIP Pass, but I think Battle VIP Pass is bad. So
I disagree, but I don't think it works in this deck.
I think Battle VIP Pass is great. It makes me upset that it's a great card, which is why I think it's bad.
I love VIP Pass, and I think that it's good in so many decks. I don't think this is one that it's good in.
And then on top of that, I think that we also need Ultra Ball. Easy to help to set it up. Let me see, which one did I get from this? I got the Scarlet and Violet one, so we got a match. So
you want a 4-3. You want 4 Nest Ball, 3 Ultra Ball.
4 Nest Ball, 3 Ultra Ball. The only other thing that I would consider, and I've done this in some of my decks, is I've done with all of these. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. We love flipping coins. Is I've had
You're not
going to
convince me otherwise. I love this card.
I've had 4-3-2, and this is like capturing Aroma, especially in an Arceus deck, is so important that I don't think that people realize, because this gets you just a card. Just gets you any one card, which you need. You just need any one card, which is all that this deck really is about.
And I agree with the other side that it's like, because the big argument for capturing Aroma came with Lugia. It is bad in Lugia.
Oh, it's bad.
It is so good in everything else. Like, this card is so much fun because you always just need to see things, especially with, like, look at our count. We've got 17 Pokemon.
Yep.
This is grabbing what you want. This is grabbing what you need. This is setting you up for any play that you want to run with. Lugia doesn't want it. This deck definitely does. Get over yourself, put it in.
And another very weird kind of just how I figure out different things that I'm going to need for my decks is I double check and see, I'm like, do I have search cards do I have at least half the amount of search cards for whatever the item or Pokemon or whatever the thing is comparatively to the cards that I'm looking for. So like Nest Ball counts as you getting 4 Pokemon because you have 4 Nest Ball. So that is 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you got 4 Nest Ball to get out to look for 10 Pokemon. You got Ultra Ball, so you've got 7 outs to it. Even with capturing Aroma, 9 outs to get 10 Pokemon. And then from the other side of it, you've got 7 evolution Pokemon. You've got like 5 outs to get 7 evolution Pokemon. So in my mind, you've got over half of the probability to even get these Pokemon. And yeah, I do think about this on a numbers standpoint. This is why my decks, even though they're not good, they function very well.
Yep.
But
they work.
So that they actually do get you to the cards that you need and get you to the things that you're actually looking for. So I think that a 4-3-2 is fantastic for this. Another card I was looking at is Switch. So we've got Switch, which I'm going to go ahead and just make this actually into an item card, which it did not really like. Nope, just got over trainers. Cool, we're just going to keep going. So there were 2 cards that I think that we really need. I think that we need Switch, just a basic regular Switch. I think that we also need escape rope. I am a big escape rope enjoyer. Big escape rope enjoyer. Trying to find the switches.
Especially in a deck where you're running your main attacker, who when they hit, you can't retreat. You want to force them to bring something else up. They're like, I'll just retreat next turn. No, you will not retreat next turn because I just hit you with the icicle shot. You are stuck up there, so I'm either taking that KO or I'm forcing you to have a switch.
Yep.
This deck wants escape rope.
You've either got the attack with whatever you're attacking me with, or you have a switch. Like, that's really all that it is. And so escape rope and switch are fantastic just inclusions in any form of this style of deck. Also because the main thing about Arceus V-Star is you want to attack with Arceus V-Star, but typically you're star birthing to be able to get Arceus V-Star into the active or get him out of the active. So you want to be able to find the card, the energy, and like just any answer to where you're going to be stepping into, and switch or escape rope are oftentimes what you're going to need. And you need both. You can't convince me that you don't need both.
No, I agree with you.
I will argue to the ends of the earth, to you viewers, that you need both. Escape rope, switch, can't tell me otherwise. Cool. In any Arceus deck. So, but yeah, so we've got some trainers and some different things in here. There is also some things like we've got the Snow Leaf badge. We've got some, we have some potential of, there is another spicy tech that nobody loves, but this is also a really good protector of your damaged and weakened, like Arceus, your damaged and weakened Glaceon if they're not able to like knock it all the way out. It's not a great card. It's also not a great tech, but it's a possibility. Since we have Snowleaf badge, I think that that's a little bit more important. But I would say oh my goodness, what is that called? Choice belt. A choice belt is a little bit more important to have. Maybe a one-off of a choice belt with like maybe one or two of the Snowleaf badges.
Well, I will say one card for as much as you will defend and rally for the escape rope, the one card that I love to at least have I want a 3 of in every deck. Like, this is a card that when I'm building a deck, I build this in first and then see if it fits. And that is the trekking shoes. I think that this is the card that you want. I think this works so well in this deck because you're throwing the water away, you're seeing more cards, you have the chance of getting stuff in your discard pile, which Glaceon wants anyway. You have the chance of getting things set and ready to run. I think that a 3 of trekking shoes is the extra consistency boost you need. If you're not running the barrel and you're not running the Rever Room, that's going to help you see extra cards. That's going to help you see the things you need to see.
So we got some trekking shoes that can kind of fight on in there. And then last but not least, one of the main, most important things that you always need to consider is you need to consider some form of stadium as you're going on into here. I think that the only other card that I would toss in here as like a maybe is a Pal Pad. Nope, that's not in there.
Maybe a one of.
Like a one of a Pal Pad. That's like a maybe that kind of goes in. But we'll put some water energy in there in a minute, and I'll tell you kind of how I think through with energy. I don't know for any of that. We'll get to that. What was the card we were just talking? Stadiums. Stadium. In this deck, there are 2 that I would put on my radar immediately. Or there's 3 technically, but 2 that I would put on my radar immediately. One, I think that's great, would be Collapsed. Did I spell Collapsed wrong?
I agree with that.
It's Collapsed? Oh, this is because I'm still set on
You're on energy still, yeah.
Collapse Stadium. I think Collapse Stadium is a great idea. I think that this card is a great idea, even though it's so bad.
Not in this deck.
And then the only other one that I can think of that's like actually halfway decent. I think that these 3, so Path to the Peak turns off. If a Pokemon with a rule box is in play, it have no abilities. It is great as a like just kind of counter to anything that is a strong ability user. So in theory, it can turn off things like the Regieleki VMAX. And the only reason that I would say to put a path in there while you're also running a Alolan Vulpix V-Star, which, Austin, isn't that counterintuitive? Yes, if you're dumb and you play both at the same time, so don't. Because really, like, the big thing about this is here to help to counter the things that have abilities. If you play this, nothing has abilities anymore. So this is mainly in here if you prize a lone V star or the V star or just the regular V, because Path can still help out in so many other different like scenarios and so many other different like things that are going on as well. So Path is great. Lake Acuity. Lake Acuity is awesome because all Pokemon that have any water or fighting energy attached, both yours and your opponents, take 20 less damage from attacks from the opponent's Pokemon. So you've got, well, we don't have water energy in here right now, but water energy. Let's see, water energy, fantastic. Oh, I can load more water energy. Let me see. Let me see, where my water energy that I like. No, they don't have the design that I like. Aw, sad. All right. Well, then we're just going to put these bad boys in there because these are just the fun ones. It won't let me put more in there. All right, cool. Well, we're at 60 right now, so we'll go ahead and we'll change some stuff out when we actually get there. And last but not least, Collapse Stadium. Collapse Stadium is great because it lets you kind of like limit their bench, which is awesome, especially if they're playing something like Gardevoir, especially if they're playing something like Lost Box, especially if they're playing something like Regieleki VMAX with the Miraidon, with the Raikus. It is great to be able to kind of like limit people's benches. Palkia is also a great option for it to be able to like limit the bench on that. So you're going to take less damage from the Palkia. So ultimately, this is a halfway decent card that I think is like, you know, pretty helpful. It can help you get there. It can help give answers to different problems. And so cool. So as of right now, if we're just kind of looking at this as a whole, whoops, wrong button. If we're looking at this as a whole, you've got all kinds of different things. Let me see if I can zoom out. Where's my zoom out function? If you are going to look at this as a whole, as of right now, kind of what we're looking at, we have got the RCSV, you got the RCSV stars, you've got some Glaceon in there with some Glaceon V-Stars and Glaceon V-Maxes, as well as just kind of giving you all kinds of different attackers. And so going on in and looking a little bit more through, you got all kinds of different supporters that are really helpful. You've got some bosses, you've got some judges, you got some researches, you got some Melanies, and then also moving on down, you've got a Snow Leaf badge, like a Snow Leaf badge or two with some water energies. And personally, we're going to have to go back through, look at this a little bit differently as I zoom us back in so we can actually, you know, see what these cards look like. Then we're going to have to change up just a few things because right now we don't have enough energy to actually help to supply a lot of the attacking that we really need to do. I think that we need one, maybe two more water energy to help us to actually get fully there. So
I think an easy give is one of our double turbos. I think that we only need 3.
Okay. So I think that I agree with you in the sense of like the whole main purpose is that we want to accelerate the water energy itself, and the basic energy is the thing that we're a little bit more high on. The other thing that, in my opinion, and you can let me know if this is crazy, I run a 4 RCS2 V-Star line, and the reason that I do that is because RCSV, super important to get out onto the bench. RCSV Star, you only really need 1. So, and like to actually get to your RCSV Star, you've got your Ultra Balls, you've got your, you know, super fun coin flips, and you've got your, you know, just top deck ability. And so actually be able to get to
just draw
your
cards
RCSV
better.
Star. Yeah, just draw it. Just do that. You can have your RCSV Star, which is going to be incredibly like helpful for you, but you only really need 1 because you only really need 1 that's like accelerating that energy to getting to all of your Pokemon, and then if it gets knocked out, then you have Melanie as the backup to be able to accelerate even more energy. But then by that point, you're hopefully set up with your Glaceon V-Stars, with your Alolan Vulpix V-Stars. You can also Melanie to your Starmies in different matchups for all kinds of different stuff. So
I would even go down to 3 RCSVs. It's like you want to have it turn 1, but you've got so many searching cards and so much like shuffleability within your deck with the research, with the shoes. You're going to find that pretty often. I think you only need 3.
Yeah. Honestly, even now that I'm looking at this, I think 9 energy might be a little bit too much just because you've got, let's see, so you need double turbo and 1 energy. So you need double turbo and 1 energy on your RCSV Star. And then that leaves you 7 energy to be able to accelerate. So that's 2 RCSV Star attacks that you can then super accelerate over to those Pokemon. So if we do need to keep that RCSV, we absolutely can. But now we've got 2 flex spots. And so you know what I said about my 2 flex spots? He's not an energy card.
Okay, so I see what you're saying, but I think that the Bidoof is the wrong move here
Yeah.
because I have a different flex spot that I think that we should use,
Okay.
and it comes in the form of a stadium. That one of my favorite stadiums currently, because of last format, and I think that we're moving back towards it, is the Temple. I think that Temple needs to be a one of here.
Okay.
Temple of Sinnoh, what you're doing is you are knocking off a Lugia deck. They cannot do what they want to do. They've got to use a turn to attack with Lugia to get rid of that. And it also does not hurt you the way that Path does not slow you down the way that the Collapsed might, and it's not, even though it's not healing or helping you like Acuity is, what it's doing is it's guaranteeing that with your Vulpix, you're safe from another path. I think that having that extra flex with another stadium is good, and I think that Temple is not the best card, but if you've got the room, Temple helps.
So right now we've got Collapsed, Lake Acuity, and Temple in here. I just bumped out the Path. So do you think that we need more than just like more of one, less of one to kind of help with a little bit of the consistency of it, or?
If you were going to do an extra of any of them, I would do 2 Temple, just because it doesn't hurt you, or maybe 2 Acuity, because it does help you. But I think that having 1/1/1 is probably good.
I think that if anything, the Acuity would probably be better, just because the Temple could hurt you if you're trying to like use your Arceus V-Star to like return an attack with. But
Yeah.
that's the only opportunity that I would really see where that would be not ideal and not great. So, but I'm probably going to go back down to 1 Acuity, 1 Collapse, and then 1 Temple. But the Temple does 100% help you out with just the Lugia aspect of different things. It forces Lugia to actually be the attacker to knock that out, and Lugia can do maximum 220, 250 with a choice belt. So, I don't know. That's great. And nothing really, besides your Alolan Vulpix V-Star, nothing really gets knocked out by Lugia with a choice belt. But if you're already attacking with your Alolan Vulpix V-Star, it can't hit you anyways. So I don't know what it's going to do. So.
Well, with our last 2 spots, we've got room for a couple of the fun techs we've talked about. So I think that an Irida could be good here. I think a Raihan could be good here. I think if we could throw in a Singular Fighting Energy and a Zapdos V, that could be good here.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm taking out, let's see, I'm taking out the Raihan. Taking out the Raihan. So we got Galarian, Zapdos, V. Wait, which art do you have? You have this art.
I use
like
the
you have
fun
that.
artwork.
You have that art in real life. This one.
Yep, that's the one.
Got the Galarian Zapdos V, and then a Fighting Energy.
Singular Fighting Energy.
Singular Fighting Energy. Hold on, we gotta find.
Let's throw in the gold, just
the gold one.
fancy.
Yeah, there we go. We put them, slap in the gold one. Is there a better gold one? Nah, I don't like that one as much. This one's cool. This one's okay. I don't know. That one's fine. That energy's fine. I think, honestly, if we go up in 1 fighting energy, we can go down in 1 water, because the fighting energy can be a flex spot for one of those colorless things. Because, I used to play the Espeon VMAX and also the Flying Pikachu VMAX. So it's like, for these attackers, sometimes you only need 1 energy. Arceus, it can take the fighting energy also. Might not even need it. So we'll put the Galarian Zapdos in there. This helps you with any kind of like fight or any kind of really a lot of decks. It really helps you out with. So
like it hits those magic numbers. You throw that belt on there, like we talked about earlier. If you're hitting up against the Miraidons, you win. If you're hitting against Lugias, you win. If you're hitting against another Arceus, you win. It's like Zapdos is the move right there.
Oh yeah. So the only thing that I would argue with is, instead of trekking shoes, if we did some B barrels, but I know you like the trekking shoes. So the only card, we've got 1 spot. Put him in there.
Do it.
Let's do that nest stash. No, that sounds really bad.
Now, if you're gonna do any one of Pokemon, the Pikachu might be nice.
Ah, Pukey Muku. I see you're a man of culture.
Like, throwing that guy away, that could be nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So being able to take him, put him on the bottom of your deck, that's a fantastic card. I love that card. Well, this is currently our build of this deck. I'm going to see if I can export the... Let's see, can I export the list? I think I can export the list if I can find out how to actually do that, and then put it in the description for you guys. So if you want to check it out, if you want to try it out on anything, maybe I'll put it on PTCGL and export that over into the description of our thing. Try it out. Let us know how it goes. Let us know how bad the deck is, but also on top of that, let us know how much fun you have playing some bad decks.
Exactly.
That's one of our favorite things to do.
We're not telling you what's going to win stuff. We're telling you you're going to have fun playing it. That's the difference.
Exactly. Well, that is going to conclude. Whoops. Awesome. Here we go. Let me see one more thing. Stop that. Go back over here and then go up into that. Boom. Perfect video editing. We're gonna get into that a little bit later, but that concludes our week's episode of Let's Build a Deck. I hope that you guys had just as much fun as we were having. It was a blast. One of my favorite things is just to put a whole bunch of random cards together and see kind of like what comes out of that.
See what happens.
As we're kind of finishing this thing out, Dalton, you want to help close us out?
I do. First, I promised you all card 3 of my 60 cards of Miascarada. There is nothing better in this deck. So honestly, I've been shuffling this entire time. You've probably seen me shuffling. I have no idea what this top deck is.
Oh, that could be bad.
We're going to see what this top deck is. We're going to see if it's the spice. If it's not the spice, we don't know. It's the spice. Here it comes.
It is the spice. Are we revealing it?
It is Sprigatito number 2. Did I know it was Sprigatito? No, I did not. I honestly just drew the next card. So we know with the Miascarada deck, it runs Sprigatito. So we've seen fantastic. 2 of them. And we've seen the switch. So you have no idea what the other 57 cards are, but there we go. That is the spice coming in.
Hey, we're getting
all right. So that is what we've got with Reveal a Card here. And then if you want to keep up with our content, we are obviously on YouTube. That's where you found us here. We are also accessible on Twitter. We are accessible on Facebook. We are accessible on Instagram. We are slowly growing the brand. We are just Draw for Turn wherever you find us. If you like our content, we're Draw for a Turn. If you don't like our content, we're not Draw for a Turn. So you can hit us up on any of the social medias. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on wherever you find your podcasts.
Absolutely. And so thank you guys so much for tuning back in to the Draw for Turn podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Let's Build a Deck version of Draw for Turn. We're going to come back with some more Let's Build a Decks coming on in next week. A lot of different spicy memes. We're going to see card number 4 of Dalton's deck. And
who knows what it'll be?
Who knows what I hope it's the 3rd Sprigatito, just on accident. Honestly, you need to pull them out and put them to the side so you can show off, like, here's the 3 that I've showed off. So it's actually not just the same Sprigatito each week.
That's fine. I drew the next card. It's an Ultra Ball. So you get the extra.
Boom.
You get the Ultra Ball there.
Boom.
Extra card.
There we go. That's what you get for staying on into the end. So thank you guys so much for tuning on in. We'll see you all next week.